Falcon Ridge Air Base, tonight was meant for remembrance, for honoring the fallen under a sky heavy with silence. But fate had other plans. From the shadows, a silver jet slices through the dark, its engines roar, drowning out the prayers. Orders are shouted, weapons lock, fingers tremble on triggers. "Who the hell is in that cockpit?" A voice cracks over the radio. Part fear, part disbelief. Every radar screen tells the same impossible truth. A name thought etched in stone. Captain Aurora Kane. A jet once buried with its pilot now defies the living. Who flies this ghost plane? And why tonight? Long before that night at Falcon Ridge, long before the silver jet sliced through the darkness, there was a young woman who defied every expectation placed upon her. Captain Aurora Kane, call sign Phantom 09, wasn't born into legend. She earned it, one mission, one impossible choice at a time. Aurora grew up near windswept airfields, watching jets carve contrails across the sky. As a child, she'd sit for hours, sketching aircraft in the margins of her notebooks, her heart beating in rhythm with the thunder of engines overhead. But passion wasn't enough. In a world where women still had to fight for a place in combat aviation's highest echelons, Aurora had to be better. Sharper, faster, steadier. And she was. She entered the academy top of her class, outflew her instructors in combat simulations, and refused to let skepticism from her peers slow her down. Her name became synonymous with precision. When she was tapped for Phantom Talon Wing, the elite squadron tasked with the nation's most dangerous missions, few outside the inner circles even knew a woman had made it in. But the pilots of Talon Wing, they knew. Because when the stakes were highest, when the storm was at its worst, they trusted Phantom 09 to lead them home. We remember the missions that make it into the history books. But what about the ones that don't? The missions whose files are buried under layers of classification, where failure meant disaster the world would never hear about, because the world wasn't supposed to know. Aurora flew those missions. Flashbacks show her jet-skimming mountaintops in enemy territory under cover of night, slipping through SAM radar nets like a wraith. Another, a narrow escape as enemy fighters close in, outnumbered 2-1. We see the moment Aurora radios her wingman, "Stick with me, I'll get you out." And she does, always does. But behind those moments of quiet valor was a woman carrying burdens unseen. There were medals, sure, medals that disappeared into drawers, never displayed. The true weight Aurora bore wasn't made of metal. It was the loneliness of knowing that success meant no one would ever know the danger she faced, that the country she served would sleep peacefully, unaware of how close disaster had come. And then there were the choices, the moral compromises, the missions where the right path was anything but clear. Once, she disobeyed a direct order to abort and instead neutralized a threat she knew would strike within hours. Saved hundreds, maybe thousands. And for it, she earned not praise but an official reprimand in a file few would ever read. Why do we remember some heroes and forget others? History favors the loud victories, the grand parades. But for every banner waved, there are countless acts of unseen courage that go unrecorded. Aurora Kane belonged to that second kind. She never chased recognition. In fact, she seemed to turn from it. Yet Aurora shattered barriers in silence. She didn't just break glass ceilings. She soared above them, proving with each mission that skill has no gender. In Phantom Talon Wing, she wasn't the woman pilot, she was the pilot, the one you wanted leading the formation when everything went wrong. But what no medal ever shows is the cost. The quiet nights in a hangar after a mission, sitting alone on a wingtip, staring into the dark sky. The friends she lost along the way, the letters she wrote and never sent, trying to explain choices she couldn't speak about. And so when the Iron Specter, her silver jet, roared back to life that night at Falcon Ridge, it wasn't just a machine defying orders. It was a legend that had carried burdens in silence for far too long, stepping out of the shadows not for glory, but because sometimes the dead return when duty demands it. It was a night unlike any other. The kind of mission that even Phantom Talon Wing whispered about in hushed tones. Classified, dangerous, and urgent. Captain Aurora Kane was chosen not because she volunteered, but because everyone knew she was the only one who could pull it off. The briefing was silent, but for the soft hum of the projector. No jokes, no bravado, just maps, target coordinates, and the weight of what was at stake. Intelligence had uncovered a plot. An enemy general coordinating a network of spies embedded deep within Allied command structures. The window to stop him was narrow. And Aurora's jet, the Iron Specter, would have to slip through layers of defenses no pilot had ever survived. She launched into the night, the silver jet a ghost against the stars. Radio silence. No backup. Just Aurora, her machine, in the endless dark. Flashbacks show the mission in stark, heart-pounding detail. The jet weaving between radar fields, skimming canyon floors, engines throttled low to stay invisible. She approached the target site, a convoy hidden deep within hostile territory, and lined up the strike. 2 precision missiles, one breath held, one breath released. Direct hit. The convoy erupted in fire, its deadly cargo destroyed. Mission success. But what came next wasn't in the plan. Aurora's instruments lit up with warnings. A missile lock. Enemy fighters scrambling fast. No exit route remained, or so it seemed. In that final radio transmission, Aurora's voice was calm. If you're hearing this, tell Talon Wing I'll see them on the other side. And then, an explosion in the distance. A ball of fire on the horizon. The Iron Specter disappeared in a shower of debris. Radar went silent. Aurora Kane was gone. At least that's what the world was meant to believe. What few knew, and what no one outside the deepest circles of intelligence would ever learn, was that the explosion was staged, the wreckage planted. The entire mission had a hidden objective: to make Captain Aurora Kane vanish, to erase her so completely that not even her closest comrades would suspect she still walked among the living. The funeral was held with full military honors, an empty coffin draped in a flag, salutes crisp and final, a folded banner handed to a mother whose tears never stopped. Her comrades stood in formation, eyes hard with grief. Sergeant Leo Dominguez, the man who had kept her jet flying like it had a soul, couldn't bring himself to speak. He placed a single wrench in the coffin before it was lowered, his silent promise to keep her memory alive in the machines he tended. The base held ceremonies each year, a name etched on the memorial wall, a jet, the Iron Specter, mothballed and hidden away, too sacred to scrap, too painful to display. But behind the scenes, Aurora was very much alive. Extracted under cover of that staged explosion, she entered a world of shadows, a ghost in service to a country that would never acknowledge her missions, her sacrifices. She dismantled the enemy spy network piece by piece, no longer as Captain Kane, but as a nameless guardian. She watched from afar as the people she loved mourned her. She read the eulogies, unseen. She visited her own grave, unseen. And here is where we must pause, to reflect on what secrecy costs, on what it asks of those who serve. Nations sometimes demand their heroes vanish, not for medals, not for ceremonies, but for the greater good. And what is the greater good, really? Safety? Security? A night's sleep untroubled by the terrors that prowl the world's dark corners? Aurora Kane bore that cost in silence, but so did those who loved her. Families who never saw a body, who were left with questions that could never be answered. Comrades who replayed that night endlessly, wondering if they could have done something, anything, to bring her home. Sergeant Dominguez kept her jet ready. Once a month, he'd fire up the systems, oil the parts, whisper to the machine like it could somehow bridge the gap between life and death. Because hope, no matter how foolish, is hard to kill. And what of the burden on Aurora herself? Each mission in the shadows, each day she watched her comrades grieve from afar, added another stone to the weight she carried. The cost wasn't just anonymity, it was isolation. No letters, no reunions, just the cold comfort of duty fulfilled, at a price few could understand. So when we speak of heroes, we must ask, do we honor only those we can see, those who stand in the light? Or do we remember the ones who are asked to disappear, to give up not just their lives, but their identities, their very place in the world they fight for? Aurora Kane became one of those heroes, a name on a wall, a memory carved in stone, and somewhere in the night, beyond the reach of applause or recognition, a guardian who kept watch in silence. For 7 years, Aurora Kane walked the world unseen. Where once she had soared above clouds in the Iron Specter, she now moved through cities, jungles, and deserts as a shadow. No rank, no call sign, no home. Her missions were as complex as they were critical, unmasking double agents who sold out their comrades, dismantling hidden cells planning attacks that would have changed the world forever, intercepting shipments of weapons that could level entire cities. The work was dangerous, brutal, and thankless. Each success was sealed in classified files, never to see the light of day. Aurora operated alone more often than not. The faces she saw in the field were fleeting: contacts, informants, allies who might not live through the night. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Even her name was no longer hers. In the shadows, she was known only by codes, false identities, and silence. And yet, she watched. She watched from afar as Falcon Ridge Air Base held its annual memorial for her. She saw grainy security footage of Sergeant Leo Dominguez standing at attention, saluting the memorial wall where her name was carved in stone. She saw him slip into the hangar afterward, where the Iron Specter waited, and start its engine for a few minutes. A ritual as sacred to him as any prayer. From hotel rooms on other continents, from bunkers buried beneath foreign soil, Aurora would close her eyes and see Leo's face, weathered by grief he wouldn't voice. She saw the lines deepen around his eyes, the silver spread through his hair. He had been more than a crew chief. He had been family, and she had let him mourn her. In the dark of those endless nights, Aurora's mind would drift back to the people she had left behind. Her mother who kept a candle in the window, the wingmates who toasted her memory each year, unaware she still walked the earth. The young pilots who spoke her name with reverence, never knowing that their legend still breathed. And here, in the quiet of her thoughts, came the guilt. Her personal monologue might have gone like this: I see their faces when I sleep. I hear their voices on the wind. And I know that my silence is the price of their safety. But does that make the burden any lighter? They mourn a ghost, and I am that ghost, walking in a world I no longer belong to. I chose this. I said yes to vanishing because I believed in the cause, in the mission, in the greater good. But no one tells you what it feels like to become invisible. No one warns you how heavy the mask will become. She remembered a night in Istanbul, the rain cold on her skin, the weight of a stolen briefcase in her hand, her target neutralized in a dark alley. The mission was a success, the world saved from another silent disaster. But when she returned to the safe house, she didn't feel triumph. Only the hollow ache of knowing that somewhere, Leo was tending to a jet he thought would never fly again. This is the human cost of unseen service. We celebrate our heroes when we can see them. We cheer for their medals, honor their funerals, tell their stories. But what about those we ask to vanish? The ones whose greatest victories will never be told, whose sacrifices will never be known. Nations demand this sometimes, for safety, for security. We ask men and women like Aurora to erase themselves so that the rest of us can live untroubled lives. And they do it, willingly. But the price is steep. For Aurora, the weight wasn't the danger. She had always faced danger with steady hands and clear eyes. The weight was the isolation, the knowledge that to protect the people she loved, she had to let them mourn her. She had to watch their sorrow and offer no comfort. And what of Leo Dominguez? His loyalty became a quiet act of defiance against time. Every month he checked the Iron Specter. He polished its panels, ran its diagnostics, changed its fluids. To others, it looked like an old man unable to let go. But to Leo, it was a promise. If she ever comes home, he told himself, she'll have a jet ready to fly. The years passed, but he never missed a month. And each time he heard the Iron Specter's engine hum to life, he felt a little less alone. On the base, young pilots spoke of Aurora as legend. They touched the Iron Specter's cold metal with reverence. Some even said they felt her spirit watching over the flight line. And perhaps, in a way, she was. In those 7 long years, Aurora Kane saved lives that would never know her name. She stopped attacks before they began. She dismantled conspiracies before they could take root. And always she carried the weight of 2 worlds, the one she protected and the one she could never return to. In a world where so much heroism is displayed for cameras, where every act of service is shared and applauded, let us not forget those who serve where no light shines. The guardians in the shadows, the ones who give up not just their safety, but their place in the world. Aurora Kane became one of those guardians. A ghost by choice because duty asked it of her, and every mission, every step she took in the dark, brought her closer to the night when she would finally return. The night the Iron Specter would rise again. Night had fallen like a shroud over Falcon Ridge Air Base. The memorial ceremony was nearing its close, the final names read, the last salutes rendered beneath a sky heavy with stars and sorrow. And then it began. At first it was a tremor in the ground, a low rumble that made heads turn and hearts race. The chaplain fell silent mid-prayer as the sound grew louder, unmistakable now, the roar of a jet engine, alive and defiant. From the shadows of Hangar 7, sealed for years, the Iron Specter rolled onto the taxiway. Silver gray under the floodlights, its fuselage seemed to glow against the night. The crowd froze. Radio chatter erupted. Tower, confirm unauthorized takeoff. Runway 4, repeat, unauthorized takeoff. Who's in that jet? Who cleared this? And inside the control tower, young officers stared in disbelief as radar screens painted an impossible picture. A call sign blinked in green, Phantom 09, the code no one expected ever to see again. Sir, a shaken controller called out to General Whitaker. It's Phantom 09. It's Kane. Whitaker, a man not easily rattled, felt the blood drain from his face. He grabbed the mic. Unknown pilot, this is General Whitaker. Shut down your engines. I repeat, shut down immediately. You are desecrating sacred ground. But the Iron Specter kept moving, calm, purposeful, a ghost refusing to stay buried. Security teams scrambled to form a blockade at the runway. Armed personnel lined up, weapons ready but hands shaking. The base wasn't just reacting to an unauthorized jet. They were reacting to a legend come to life. Some whispered in confusion, is this some sick joke? Others stared, transfixed. It can't be. It's her jet. It's her. Sergeant Leo Dominguez stood rooted in place. His heart thundered in his chest as the jet rolled closer. Even after all these years, he knew every line of that aircraft, every sound of its engine. He whispered, as if afraid to hope, come on, girl, is it really you? The Iron Specter reached the edge of the runway and came to a stop. The engine powered down. Silence fell like a weight across the base. The canopy hissed open. A figure rose from the cockpit, helmeted, flight suit dusty with years of hard use. General Whitaker strode toward the jet, flanked by senior officers, his face a mask of authority, but his mind swirling with questions he dared not voice. The figure on the wing paused, then lifted the helmet away. It was Aurora Kane, older, scarred, streaks of silver at her temples, but unmistakably her. The crowd gasped. Leo Dominguez dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion. Whitaker stopped a few paces away, searching her face for answers. His voice, when it came, was a low rasp. Aurora, how is this possible? Aurora stood at attention and saluted. Reporting for duty, sir. Apologies for the entrance. Some stories deserve a little theater. The general's composure cracked, just for a moment. We buried you. We mourned you. Aurora nodded, eyes soft with sorrow. You buried an empty coffin, sir, and a lie we had to tell. There, beneath the gaze of stunned soldiers, Aurora told her truth. The mission that had been a cover for her disappearance, the staged explosion, the years spent dismantling a network of traitors and enemy agents. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight of those years. I lived in the shadows so that others could live free. Every day I was gone, I thought of this place, of you, of them. Whitaker shook his head, emotions warring behind his eyes. And now? Why come back now? Aurora gestured toward the memorial wall, glowing softly in the night. Because the mission is over, and because it was time for the ghost to come home, Leo Dominguez finally found his voice, tears streaking down his weathered face. 7 years, Captain. 7 years I kept her ready, just in case. Aurora stepped down from the wing, placed a hand on his shoulder. I knew you would, Leo. I knew you would. The base watched as these two, pilot and crew chief, reunited. The unspoken bond between them deeper than words. Young pilots crowded near, wide-eyed, seeing not just a legend, but living proof that duty can outlast even death. And so we come to the deeper meaning of Aurora Kane's return. Her reappearance wasn't just the breaking of silence, it was a challenge to everything we think we know about honor, memory, and unfinished duty. We build memorials to those we lose. We carve their names in stone. We tell ourselves their stories are finished. But Aurora's return reminds us that some stories never end. That duty doesn't always end at death, or at what we think is death. She came back not for glory, but to restore what was broken, to heal what secrecy had scarred, to remind her comrades that the fight is never over and that sometimes the greatest acts of service happen out of sight, without medals, without parades. Aurora's return forced the base, and all who witnessed it, to reconsider what it means to serve. To remember that heroes don't always rest easy, that the burden of protection, of guardianship, often means walking in silence, unseen, until the moment comes when the world needs them again. Imagine this, Aurora standing once more before the Iron Specter, her hand resting on its cool metal, the base bathed in quiet awe, the stars above witness to the impossible. General Whitaker, at last, lowers his head in respect. "Welcome home, Captain." And the camera pulls back, from the jet, from the base, into the vast night, as the legend of Aurora Kane takes flight again. Not as a ghost, but as a guardian returned. As the night deepened, the roar of the Iron Specter's engine faded into memory, but the weight of its return lingered heavy over Falcon Ridge Air Base. Faces that moments ago burned with confusion and fear now showed something different: awe, wonder, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, some ghosts come home. General Whitaker stepped forward, his boots crunching on the tarmac, his voice low but firm. "Captain Kane, after all this time, why? Why the secrecy? And why now?" Aurora met his gaze, her posture straight, her voice steady but soft. "Sir, because duty demanded it. That night, the explosion, the wreckage you found. It was all part of a mission within a mission. The only way to stop the threat we uncovered was for me to disappear completely, to make the world and even our own people believe I was gone." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Pilots and crew who had mourned her, who had toasted her memory at every ceremony, now tried to make sense of the impossible truth. Aurora continued, her voice gaining strength. "For 7 years I worked in the shadows, dismantling a network that had burrowed deep into our defenses. 13 enemy agents, 4 traitors in our own command. I didn't come back until that work was finished, until you were safe." Whitaker struggled for words, his military bearings shaken by the flood of emotions. "We thought we laid you to rest. We thought we honored your sacrifice." Aurora's eyes flicked to the memorial wall where her name was carved. "And I am honored, sir, more than I can say. But now it's time to honor those who kept believing, who kept watch." Her gaze shifted, locking onto the one man who had carried the weight of her memory every day, Sergeant Leo Dominguez. Leo stepped forward, his hands trembling, his face lined with years of regret and loyalty. He stood before her, unsure whether to salute, embrace, or fall to his knees. "Ma'am," his voice broke on the word, "7 years. I thought maybe I missed something. Maybe I could have saved you." Aurora shook her head gently and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Leo, you did everything right, more than right. You kept her ready. Every month I knew. Somehow, I knew you would. That's why I came home tonight." Tears filled Leo's eyes, but a smile, small and true, broke through at last. "I told her, every time I fired her up, that she'd fly again. I just didn't know you'd be the one in the seat." Aurora squeezed his shoulder. There was never going to be anyone else. Turning to face the crowd, young pilots, senior officers, crew members, civilians, Aurora's voice rang clear across the tarmac. "I didn't come back tonight for applause or parades. I came back because the mission is done. And now it's time to rebuild, to mentor, to give back, to help this base, this family, heal from the wounds my secrecy caused. The young pilots looked at her with wide, eager eyes, not just seeing a legend, but seeing a leader who had walked the hardest path and returned with lessons to share. General Whitaker found his voice again, his composure returning. You'll have every resource you need, Captain, and every ounce of respect you're owed. Aurora nodded, humbled by the words, but focused on what came next. I want to help these pilots understand that real service isn't about glory. It's about doing what's right when no one sees. It's about sacrifice without recognition. I want to show them what guardianship truly means. And in that moment, the culture at Falcon Ridge began to shift. For too long, valor had been measured in medals, in ceremonies, in names etched in stone. But Aurora's return forced everyone to look deeper, to consider the heroes who serve without fanfare, without history's spotlight, in silence and secrecy. Her presence reminded them that honor isn't only in the deeds that make the news, but in the sacrifices no one will ever hear about, in the missions that save lives quietly, in the loyalty of those like Leo, who keep faith when all hope seems lost. Aurora Kane's return wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new way of thinking, a call to honor the hidden service, the silent duty, the guardians in the shadows. As dawn's first light crept over the horizon, casting the Iron Specter in a pale glow, Aurora stood beside Leo, watching the young pilots gather. "What now, Captain?" Leo asked quietly. Aurora looked toward the rising sun, then at the eager faces before her. "Now we teach. Now we build. Because the sky will always need its guardians, and some ghosts were never meant to stay buried. Heroism. We use the word so easily. We think of medals, of speeches, of names etched in stone. But what if true heroism isn't about being seen at all? What if it lives in the quiet moments, in the sacrifices no one notices, the service no one applauds? What if the greatest heroes are the ones who guard us in silence, asking nothing in return? Captain Aurora Kane's story reminds us that real heroism often happens far from the spotlight. In today's fast-moving world, it's easy to forget that many of the most meaningful sacrifices go unseen. The neighbor who checks on veterans down the street, the nurse who stays late with no thanks, the family member who puts everyone else first, quietly, every day. These are the silent guardians of our communities, and they are all around us. Aurora's journey teaches us that honor isn't found only in medals or ceremonies. It's in the everyday choices, doing what's right, even when no one notices. In today's world, where recognition often comes before service, that lesson feels more important than ever. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Who is the silent hero in your life? Someone who gives quietly, who protects, who serves without asking for applause? Share their story in the comments, because their example can inspire others. Let's make sure they are seen. And if Aurora's return made you think about what it truly means to serve, to protect, and to stand by others, please like this video, subscribe, and join us as we continue to share stories that honor those who give so much, often unseen. Thank you for spending time with us today. And remember, some heroes walk among us quietly until the world needs them again.